We set up a reconnaissance team. One of the teams went to the history district of the city in a cluster of mansions that they call the historic district, where the yuppies and buppies would come and they would, tourists would come through and they would go inevitably through this historic area of Austin. Other teams went elsewhere, but another team went to the city council to get a hold of the budget, to see the priorities. And this team was able to get a hold of the budget, and they looked at every item of the budget. And they looked, and indeed, there was nothing in terms of allocation of funding for people who lost their jobs and became homeless. And so therefore, you had this despicable situation in downtown Austin, where you had mothers and their children and homeless folks who were in these low makeshift dog houses that they put together in tents. All in all the parking lots and in the alleyways, it was just blatant, and yet nothing was being done. And they saw that reflected in the budget. And when they looked at every item of the budget, they found this one curious item on the budget. At that time, this is in the late 80s, it was the purchase of Canadian geese at the tune of $800 per goose. You know, all those things that come around here now, they had to purchase those bad boys initially during that period. So they took that, slap in the face where money is put toward this goose, right? The purchasing of all these geese. So the yuppies and the buppies, right, can do lunch. They don't call it go eat. They call it do lunch, right? And so they put all the facts together as a collective and came up with an action where they can get attention and begin to break their isolation and start the organizing drive. And so they identified one of the mansions and took over the mansion and called the police and said, we are here. We've occupied this area. And then the next day, about 12 noon, here come the sirens, and here come the reporter vans coming in the direction of the historic district. They drive up to the mansion where we had taken over. They jumped out of the car with the guns out, the cameras rolling. They knocked on the door. It says, come out of there. We know you're in there. And one of the homeless sisters says, we know we're in here. We called you. It was an invite. In about 30 seconds to 45 seconds elapsed, so you can hear a pin drop. And then finally, one of these big door of the mansion began to creakily open. And there stood a homeless brother and a homeless sister with one of the goose by the neck. They had kidnapped one of the goose. And they had a knife at the neck of the goose. And they told the police and the media, you take one more step closer, this goose is cooked. And they held them for 1.5 to 2 weeks. They didn't want to move on them. And they would have to have press conferences. They was able to talk about their problems, why you have money going toward goose and not toward babies and homeless children and families and so on. And they was able to attract local leaders, trade union leaders, religious leaders who came, who broke their isolation, and they were able to kick off the organizing drive. Creativity, right? That's that goal. Collectivity. Organizing is about collectivity, is about creativity. And I think the main lessons from the homeless organizing, and we got plenty more stories and plenty more lessons that we need to exchange.